The desert breathed heat as daylight bled slowly into dusk, painting the horizon in smoldering shades of crimson and gold. The Apache camp had begun to quiet. Evening chores nearly finished, fires being lit, children being called home, but something in the air felt wrong. The elders sensed it first. They paused mid-sentence, eyes narrowing toward the distant hills. Dogs began to bark restlessly. The wind shifted, carrying not just dust, but the tremor of countless hooves striking the ground in perfect, thunderous rhythm. Soon the sight revealed itself. A massive herd surged forward like a living storm. 1,000 horses, strong, disciplined, groomed to perfection, moving with unity as if commanded by the earth itself. At their head rode a man in a weather-worn coat, his posture straight, his face carved with arrogance. He slowed only when he reached the heart of the camp, as though he believed even silence owed him respect. The Apache warriors formed a solid barrier, eyes sharp, bodies ready, hands hovering near weapons. Every instinct screamed danger, but curiosity held them still. The chief stepped forward, calm, unyielding, the embodiment of authority. Beside him stood Aiyana, wrapped in quiet strength, her gaze unwavering, a presence both gentle and powerful. The rancher dismounted casually, dust swirling around his boots. He looked around as if appraising valuables at a market rather than human lives. Then he spoke. His voice cut through the camp like a cold blade. He declared his purpose without shame, without hesitation, without honor. He offered 1,000 horses, his wealth, his pride, his empire, in exchange for a single night with the chief's wife. Gasps broke the air. Fury ignited instantly. Warriors stepped forward with fire in their eyes, breaths sharp with rage. Some shouted. Some cursed. Mothers shielded daughters as if the very idea was a stain. Even the horses seemed restless, stomping, sensing the storm brewing among hearts. But the chief did not move. He raised his hand, commanding silence not with force, but with respect earned over a lifetime. The tribe obeyed. The tension held like a string stretched to breaking point. The fire crackled. The wind whispered. Every soul in that camp waited to see what would come next. And in that suspended moment, destiny hovered. Knowing that this outrageous offer would not simply test pride, it would test souls, honor, and the true measure of humanity. Night wrapped itself around the Apache camp like a cloak of tension, heavy with arguments, fear, and wounded honor. Fires burned brighter than usual, as though trying to hold back the darkness pressing from every side. Warriors debated fiercely, their pride burning like embers. Some demanded blood, insisting the rancher's insult could only be answered with violence. Others, especially the younger men, stared at the endless herd of horses and felt the pull of power, opportunity, and survival. The elders spoke of caution, of thinking beyond anger, of measuring consequences before allowing rage to decide the tribe's fate. Through it all, the chief remained quiet, steady, and watchful. His strength did not come from shouting. It came from the silence of a man who trusted something greater than his own pride. But the one everyone watched most was Aiyana. She had not spoken since the offer was made, yet her silence was not weakness. It was thought. It was strength gathering itself. She was not merely a chief's wife. She was a pillar of the tribe, a keeper of wisdom, a woman whose spirit had guided their people through drought, loss, and war. Every eye waited for the moment she would speak, because they understood something important. This insult was directed toward her, not the tribe. Her dignity was the flame at the center of the storm. Finally, as dawn began to brush pale light across the sky, Aiyana rose. The camp fell silent instantly. Even the wind stopped to listen. She stepped forward with the calmness of someone who carried both fire and peace inside her. Her voice, when she spoke, was clear and steady, filled not with anger, but with a power that made the rancher's arrogance seem small. She reminded her people that no one owned her, not even the chief. She reminded them that a woman was not a prize, not a currency, not a trade to be weighed against horses. If this was a challenge, it was not to warrior strength, but to the tribe's understanding of dignity. Then she did something no one expected. She agreed to spend one night with the rancher, but on terms of spirit, not flesh. A night of truth instead of shame. A night of words instead of humiliation. And as she spoke those terms, the tribe realized this was no submission. It was a test, not of her, but of him, and of what kind of man he truly was beneath the armor of wealth and pride. Morning crept slowly over the land, washing the camp in pale gold, as if the sun itself hesitated to witness what the night had decided. When Aiyana returned at dawn, she did not walk like a woman conquered. She walked like a storm that had passed and left only clarity behind. Her steps were calm. Her face was strong. There was no shame in her eyes, only quiet power. The tribe watched in breathless silence, searching her expression for answers, for wounds, for any hint that dignity had been stolen. But there was nothing of the sort. Instead, there was a strange calm and a subtle shift in the world around them. Behind her stood the rancher, no longer towering with arrogance. Something in him had broken during the night, not his pride alone, but the blindness that had always lived in his heart. He looked at the tribe now, not as possessions or obstacles, but as people, as spirits, as lives woven with meaning. The man who had once spoken with entitlement now seemed smaller, humbled, human for perhaps the first time in his life. His gaze lingered on Aiyana, not with hunger, but with respect, and a kind of shaken awe. The chief stepped forward, his presence steady as ever. The camp tightened in anticipation. Every warrior, every mother, every elder waited for judgment, for some outcome that could restore balance. Instead of anger, the chief's voice carried patience and quiet strength. He did not demand apology. He did not threaten war. He simply watched the rancher, letting silence weigh heavily, demanding honesty without a word. The rancher swallowed, shoulders heavy beneath the invisible burden of guilt and awakening. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked the sharp confidence it once carried. Instead, it trembled with sincerity. He admitted his greed. He admitted his foolishness. He admitted that he had come believing wealth made him powerful, that horses could bend any will, that pride could own anything, even a woman's dignity. But Aiyana had shown him something he had never encountered: strength without violence, dignity without cruelty, wisdom greater than wealth. Without hesitation, he released the reins. All 1,000 horses were gifted freely, not payment, not trade, but a gesture of remorse and respect. The tribe watched, stunned. The chief inclined his head. Aiyana did not smile, but her eyes softened. The wind stirred, as if the land itself approved. No blood was spilled. No honor was lost. Instead, something unexpected was born, a lesson that power is nothing without humanity, and that sometimes the greatest victories are won not with weapons, but with the unbroken spirit of a single courageous soul.